What up, friends? My own thoughts are barely in my head. But today we're going to be reviewing Run River North's newest album, Creatures in Your Head. This is the third record from Korean-American indie rock and folk pop outfit, Run River North. This is also the project that follows their 2016 record, Drinking from a Salt Pond. You know, the group has had some pretty big changes that they've gone through after releasing their previous record, from losing a few members to going completely independent from their record label. The sound on this new project is sort of a combination of everything that they've learned up until this point. They sort of bring their folk pop sounds from their debut and combine it with the indie rock tendencies of their second record in some pretty engaging and unique ways, despite being somewhat familiar as well. The opening title track, Creatures in Your Head, is a pretty strong start to the record, with a very clear guitar tone matched with some softer, fuzzier bass. It has that chill indie rock flair that's smooth to listen to, but also has that groove that keeps you interested. The vocals on here are really delicate, and I love the space between all of the instrumentals on this one. The chorus is really light and sweet, and it's a pretty interesting contrast from the darker lyrics about dealing with insecurities and intrusive thoughts in your head. In a way, it's almost a sort of endearing track, like you're helping someone else deal with these insecurities and self-conscious thoughts, so that's a pretty cool angle. Spiders, on the other hand, is a bit less interesting. It's kind of their standard acoustic guitar-focused indie track, and it's a bit too similar to what we've seen on the previous album. However, what brings this track from boring down to obnoxious is that incessant popping that's going on in the instrumental. It is so distracting, and not in an amusing way either. Like, I thought my audio was glitched until I heard it across all platforms, and it's just like, why? It's a huge oversight. I don't know if they just wanted to add some texture to the track or what, but it does not work. The lyrics are poetic enough, and the chorus has some much needed energy, but the popping, it just ruins the song. Pretty Lies is a great one, though. I love the darker guitars and the elegant background vocals, and the more static beat and synths were also pretty cool. These elements also contrast the very light chorus and pre-chorus really nicely. The vocals are great in general, and I really love that we're getting to hear Sally more. I've always liked the rare glimpse of her that we got on previous albums, and giving her an entire verse here was a really smart idea. She adds a really chill and smooth vibe that makes her stand out from Alex's vocals on this song. It also fits the sort of relationship angle in the lyrics as well, expressing how little lies can add up to be something that just ruins relationships. Lonely Weather is probably the most unique song on here, and it's really fun as well. It has that indie pop aesthetic that bands like The Neighborhood might be at home with, alongside these sort of exaggerated flows and keyboards that give this song a nice attitude. The flow switches in the verses are pretty fun, and the difference between them and the more traditional chorus also highlights how unique both elements are. It also really adds to the variety in the track too. It's catchy as hell, and it has that feel-good image with a tinge of seasonal depression. Hummingbird is another track that opts for a very different vibe, kind of honing in on the K-R&B scene that's really big right now. This is especially true in the very deep bass and the sort of simplified drum kit as the backbone. There's very melodic vocals on here though, and the flows on this track are really smooth. I think it can occasionally be a little bit too simplistic at times, and the verses sound noticeably more fleshed out compared to the chorus. However, it has that sort of downcast groove that at least makes it fitting for this record. And again, I'm loving how much of Sally that we're getting to hear here, especially because she was fucking made for tracks like these. That distant ambience combined with her smooth and delicate flows and that noisy outro, like, it's fantastic. Funhouse is definitely a callback to the more upbeat songs of Drinking from a Salt Pond. Indie rock fans are gonna love this one, from the twangy guitars and the really rapid pacing. We even got the cowbell for good measure, and I love how that chorus just comes crashing in as the pre-chorus builds up. It almost sounds like kind of garagey at times, which is a pretty fun angle for them to tackle. I love the vocal cadence on the second verse especially, and the sort of glitchy guitar picking is really fun, and especially when paired with lyrics about how social media and people with these perfect lives are just totally fake. One for me is a softer ballad tune evoking vibes from their debut album, albeit applying this sort of deep electronic beat during the chorus. It's admittedly kind of boring, even if the contrast between the verses and chorus is somewhat interesting. It does pick up near the end, which is nice, but overall, I'm just kind of feeling like generic love song vibes for this one. There's just nothing that really stands out to me. Cemetery is a pretty similar case. There's a decent beat on this one, but there's nothing about the track that really separates it from any other indie artist to me. It's just a bit too low-key for its own good, without much of an identity of its own, especially in the repetitive bass lines and the fairly bare chorus. Goodnight Moon, on the other hand, is how you do an acoustic ballad. There's some raw emotion on this one, and the lyrics are among the most poignant and personal on the entire record. The singer-songwriter aesthetic really fits the sort of warm recollection about family and hopes for the future. I also really love the dual delivery from Alex and Sally and how they harmonize together as well. It's a fairly religious song, which I can't really relate to, atheist and all. However, it's delivered with such passion, sincerity, and vividness that it's really hard not to be charmed by it. The final song, Wait, is my favorite on the entire album. It's a great combination of all of their sounds that they've explored previously, with the new addition and focus on the synths and the sort of twinkly, twangy guitars. It's so dreamlike and ethereal with its huge vocal presence and very driving beat. The chorus is just fantastic with how uplifting it is, and the transition from it to the verses is really well done and seamless. It's just such a feel-good song overall too, expressing how just being with a specific person can take a weight off your shoulders and basically encourage you to be a better person. There's smooth and subtle bass lines, great harmonies, like, what more could you want? Now, they're not reinventing the wheel, but Run River North are showing that they can still provide some pretty great and tight indie pop and rock performances without sacrificing their sound. It's also showing how they can still write some pretty engaging and catchy tunes in spite of all the shenanigans that happen to them. Combining all of the sounds that they've worked on previously also proved to be a pretty great way to remain tight and familiar, while also allowing them a little bit of leeway to experiment with some other subtler effects. I would like to see them move into more experimental territory though, along with applying that vivid songwriting to the indie rock tracks alongside the more acoustic ballad ones. Overall though, this is just a light and fun listen that I think most indie fans can get behind. I'm feeling a light 7 on Run River North's Creatures in Your Head. Of course, we do have to talk about album covers on this show, and overall, I think this is a pretty unique one. It has that sort of inside-out effect to it, where it's sort of manifesting and representing all of the thoughts inside of your head as these little creatures, and it's very sort of animated in that way as well. It doesn't necessarily perfectly capture the sort of sound of the record itself, but I think it does get the ideas across pretty well, and it does stand out among all of their other album covers too. So that was pretty good, and I guess to be fair, it does have that sort of quirky nature to it that you can expect from indie. So overall, I think it's a pretty good album cover. But those were just my thoughts on the new Run River North project. What did you guys think? Are you glad they're still kicking, still making new stuff, and you like how they're combining all of their sounds together? Or were you hoping for something a little bit more unique? Let me know. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Ring the bell if you want to be inside of my head for like 5 seconds. And until the next one, farewell.